What's going on, everyone? I'm James Grage here at thebodybuilding.com, and we've got an awesome workout today, and what I think is going to be an awesome conversation as well. I'm here with Rachel Pyron, who is a bodybuilding.com team member and also a strongman competitor. I think that you're going to like what we're going to do today. So what we're going to be doing that's different than what you would expect in a normal leg workout is we're going to be training with resistance bands only.
Okay, I'm excited.
You ready to try it?
Yep, let's do it.
Awesome. All right, so this first exercise, we're going to do two variations of this today. The first variation is to target our hamstrings and our glutes. And there's little subtle changes that we're going to make. And on the second variation, we're going to switch it up and we're going to target the quads.
Okay.
So this is a split squat. Now, when you anchor the band under your foot, the first thing that you want to do is make sure you get it under the arch of your foot. A lot of people have a tendency to get it under their toe like that, and then as you pull, it unweights the front of your foot, and we actually use our toes to balance.
Sure.
So then they have a tendency to lose their balance. So now the biggest mistake that people make when using bands, they're like, oh, they're too easy, is because they're not creating enough tension at the beginning of the range of motion. I'll grab it, usually right about there. In my setup, you can see I've got 90 at the knee in the front, 90 at the back, so this is my starting position right here. Grab the band, chin up, and what we're gonna do is we're not gonna press up. We're gonna press through our heel back, just like this. Back down and back, as opposed to pressing through our toe and straight up, which is more quad activation. So that'll be variation number 2. So that's the subtle difference. Quad, hamstring. So now a general rule, quad activation is more in the knee, hip is more glutes and hamstrings. So as you press backwards, make sure you get that squeeze.
Should I use this one or a smaller one?
I don't know, you're America's strongest woman.
I feel like I'm gonna start with this one.
I recommend starting with a light band first. What we're gonna do is establish that mind-muscle connection, really focus on good contractions without worrying about what the resistance is. Push right through that heel, yep. All of a sudden you start to feel what I think is a very unique contraction. You start to even feel that tie-in between the hamstrings and glutes. Yeah. You starting to feel it? Building muscle is about the right combination of mechanical tension, in other words, resistance, in combination with time under tension. Like we talked about, you don't just have resistance in that vertical plane. As you push back, it's trying to pull you forward. So you're having to engage your core. You're working your abs and all those stabilizer muscles in your core, just trying to keep your torso upright. And for someone like you, especially, who wants to focus on overall strength,
right?
That's one of the advantages of training with bands, especially when you start getting into things like anchored exercises, where we change the plane of resistance from a vertical plane, like we're so used to now a horizontal plane.
You don't see anything in strongman where you're sitting down.
Never.
And in life, you're usually not sitting down when you need to lift something up over your head. So
yep.
I think it's good to add in things like this that will carry over into more functional movement.
Now we're gonna go up in resistance.
Okay.
2 ways to do it. You can either grab closer to the anchor point, makes it harder, or we can go up in resistance. Just as a reference point, what kind of weight have you moved around?
Last year at America's Strongest Woman, I deadlifted like 355 with an axle bar, which is a very thick bar, so it's a lot harder to hold.
A lot harder, yeah.
Yeah.
Just a good reference point.
Different.
Someone that's strong here. So I want to challenge you here. I want you to get a good workout. So take all that slack out, so in your starting movement, when you move your shoulders up, you got tension there. Yep.
Yeah, that's harder.
There you go. 2 more, and then let's switch. And then you're gonna see that subtle difference as we move over and target the quads. How's it feel?
Hurts.
It hurts, right?
It's a good hurt. I definitely noticed the tie-in more, like you mentioned. I wasn't expecting with the hamstring glute tie-in. You definitely feel a lot more like isolation of the hamstring, where I'm used to using free weights that don't have tension the whole time. So
right.
It's a different feel for sure.
This is, a similar body position to a lunge. Really feeling more just in the glutes and the quads. This, getting, like I said, that really unique contraction between the two.
I'm definitely more quad dominant too, so it's
you're having to override it. So I hear you breathing.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard, right?
Yeah. It's hard because it's constant tension through the whole movement. Like,
Yep.
I definitely feel like the stress in the hamstring.
Did you feel that muscle? Did you feel it was
absolutely.
targeted?
Yeah, definitely.
Did you feel
Probably
tired?
more so than I usually do with a split squat, because I usually am so much more quad focused. So
Right.
it is nice to have that variation of focusing on
Well, good. Now we get to do exactly what you like to do. We're going to go quad focus here.
Okay.
Same setup. The only thing that I would say is go just a hair narrower in your stance. So that back foot not quite as far back, just creep it in just a couple inches. And then what we're going to do is you're going to press to the front of your foot, and I want you to press straight up. I tricked you. You stayed with that band. I'm going to challenge you here. Do you already feel the difference between the two?
Yeah, definitely. It's hard to like switch my brain to going back to not pushing back.
Look, working out is not as complicated as we have a tendency to make it. I mean, for the most part, even though we're training with a different tool, right? This is still something that you're familiar with. So now we're gonna kind of play around with variable resistance. So you're gonna stick with that same band, but we wanna increase the resistance. So you're just gonna grab lower, closer to your foot, and you tell me if that feels different.
Yeah, that's hard.
A lot harder. That's hard. So you can see that there's a lot of different resistance levels in one band. People ask me, well, how much resistance is in one band? I say, well, it depends on how much you stretch the band. So one of the things I think people think is that you can't create enough resistance with bands. Do you think that I could create enough resistance with these bands to where you couldn't do that movement?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I think too, there's so much more going on with your grip. You're not just moving aimlessly like through a workout.
Yeah.
You're really having to focus on so much at the same time.
Bands aren't the same as free weights. There's no way that we can load up as much resistance just holding it in our hands as we can with a bar sitting across our shoulders. Clearly our shoulders can carry more than our hands can.
Sure.
So yes, if we took the bands and we anchored them to a bar, we could create a ton of resistance, so much that you couldn't even move it. But when we're training this way with only a set of bands and there's no handles or anything like that, we have to shift our focus a little and not just make it about sheer resistance, we have to make it more about technique, good contractions.
That's sweating. I don't usually sweat very much.
No?
No,
We
not
sweat
unless
now.
I'm running.
So now we're gonna move over to an overhead squat. Same anchor point here, right under our feet. I still like to get under the arch of my feet here just for the sake of balance. One of the things I like about bands is that I can load and unload a band to get in position. So for example, if I was gonna do an overhead squat, think about it. We'd have to get over to the squat rack there. You have to get in position. You gotta press it up. I can come down here where there's no tension and I can get into position here
Okay.
before I stand
Oh,
up.
I see what you're saying. Got it.
So, and then same thing, instead of trying to do this maneuver right here and put my shoulder in jeopardy, all I have to do is simply squat down and take the band off. So, here's what it's gonna look like. So first overhead is we're gonna squat down, press halfway, back down, and up. Like I said, we have to use a little bit of different technique here to really get that deep contraction.
We should see if I
Use a
can
little
do
bit
it.
more volume to make up for the lack of, heavy tension that you can get with a bar. Feel it?
Yeah.
What if I told you you had to go to 20?
Okay. It's hard to hold at the top.
It is, because
My
you feel
arms-
it pulling you all over the place, right? Think about how all of your stabilizer muscles in your whole body are firing right now, right? Your hips, your shoulders, everything.
It's hard.
That's hard, right?
That's good.
Wait,
it's hard.
I thought resistance bands were easy. I thought they were for old people.
It's definitely, because even if you're doing overhead squat with a bar, you don't have the pulling at the top. It's still hard, but it's not the same tension through your upper back.
Exactly. The goal is to keep it locked in there because you don't want that weight shifting, because that's when you're going to injure yourself. But this, it's very difficult. And yes, all those stabilizer muscles are having to fire. And as we do a lot of these big movements, these big primary movers, the bigger muscle groups get stronger and stronger and stronger.
Neglect the rest.
And we neglect the rest, and so there's this disparity between the two.
Yeah, and I think that's what's attributed to a lot of my own injury with my back. And when you are powerlifting and doing strongman, like your core workouts take so long just to work through a squat.
Yep.
And you see it all the time in the gym. People walk straight up to a barbell, throw a weight on it, and start squatting.
It's crazy.
Without any sort of warm up. So I think no matter what, like we're always quick to like neglect those intrinsic muscles and stabilizers. So
even professional athletes a lot of times neglect it. And so one of the cool things here is every single movement we do, we are working those. And we are working our abs. Like I don't do a lot of abs because I train this way, and every movement I do engages my core.
Engaging everything. Okay.
If you saw someone do it, you wouldn't think it was that hard.
No.
That's the thing about bands, they're deceptive. You know, you think, they're just little rubber bands. How hard could they really be? There you go. Now you're breathing.
That's 10.
Good.
My arms are tired too.
Yeah? You feel that though?
Yes, it's good.
And think about it, that's not a lot of resistance, right? We talk about, comparing that to say 225 on a bar, but you can still get that same kind of muscle activation. Ready for the next exercise? All right.
Getting tired though.
Getting tired?
Good tired.
You said you like being
tired. I like
tired.
being tired, so this is good.
So we're gonna do a variation of a deadlift. What I like about doing bands in a deadlift style movement is the weight is no longer out in front of us, because now, as I anchor this weight, think about where the line of pull is. It's centered in my body. So that's the first thing I like. Now I can drop my butt down. This looks just like a squat, right? So now I can also engage more my quads.
Okay.
Whereas a traditional deadlift is more hamstrings and glutes.
Right.
Down here at the bottom, able to get 90 degrees there at the knee.
Okay.
Bands have some advantages over free weights. We've got resistance in multiple planes. We have constant tension all the way through, like you've experienced.
It works for me a lot better to wrap it around my wrist.
Yeah, actually, that's a good technique, and now you're putting a lot of it in your wrist, taking the stress out of your hand. You're so used to being confined to a gym in order to get a good workout, but if I can do this outside on a beach or a mountain or in the park.
And then people are traveling a lot, so the last thing you have time for usually when you're traveling is a gym, or you end up in a hotel gym with a 5 and a 10 random set of dumbbells.
We're moving on to our final exercise. This one is going to be a stiff leg deadlift. So we're gonna focus the hamstrings and glutes, and it's gonna look just like it would if you were doing it with a bar, except we're gonna anchor it under our feet. If you need more tension, you can just widen your stance slightly. You don't want to lock your knees, but you do want your legs straight. You almost wanna think of this the same way you would think of if you were stretching your hamstrings. What would you do? You'd keep your legs straight, you'd keep your back straight, and you'd go down until you reach that point where there's that tension. So this is the starting point, all the way up, but get that hip activation and squeeze those glutes. Gonna switch?
Yeah, just so I can grip it better, and I think I can add more tension being able to grip it differently.
Cool. And then this is a good opportunity, since you're going down resistance, you can also adjust on the fly, like you're doing, doubling up the band on your hand or adjusting the width of your stance. And there's a bit of a learning curve here. So you see Rachel making little adjustments with her hand, with her grip, with her feet. That's the same way it is with anything, making these small adjustments. So this is her first time ever doing legs with bands, but I guarantee you after she did it 2 more times, this would be easy, it'd be second nature. She would already know how she wanted to hold it, how she wanted her feet. So considering that she's never done it before, I think she's doing a really good job acclimating to this.
Getting shaky.
Getting shaky? Getting wobbly? On isolation exercises, I like sometimes focusing on a little bit lighter resistance and going a little bit higher in reps, just because I really start to feel that deep burn in the muscle.
Yeah, there's nothing like that hamstring burn, which comes with higher reps for sure, I think. So I would like to use this like after maybe your heavier sets, definitely finishing with an exercise like that.
My whole goal was to show even the most hardcore of us gym rats, that these are an effective training tool no matter what your goal is. Even if it's up here, they're still effective. But my real goal is to be able to help your average person just squeeze it in, make fitness more attainable.
When you can make it fit your lifestyle and make it accessible, then it's a lot easier to stay consistent with something like that.
So let me ask you now, compare and contrast. So the beginning of the workout, you're like, okay, not really sure.
No, it's interesting. I was really curious, again, like how you were gonna do split squats, because I had seen that on the list, and I was like, I don't know how you would do that with a band. So I'm excited to add this into my own training.
This is a really inexpensive piece of equipment that you can adapt to any style of training.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, make sure you actually can check them out here on bodybuilding.com. Undersun Fitness bands come in a set of 5 different resistance levels, just like the ones we're using here. Rachel,
awesome.
You're the
Thank
best.
you.
That was
Appreciate
awesome.
it.
And I'll see you guys next video.